if you could just kind of maybe give us a little bit of your background, so folks know a little bit about you.
You begin first.
Okay. Well, I'm a physician, urologist actually, and I started learning and reading about low carb in 2011 when I first read the book by Gary Taubes, Why We Get Fat. And after I read that book, I started reading everything that I could put my hands on about low carb, about ketogenic diets, and I started doing it myself. I lost some 30 pounds easily in like 3 months. So after I had that experience, you can't unsee it, right? And I started blogging, and the blog became well read in Brazil. It was the largest blog in Portuguese about low carb. And I guess it was how Janaína started reading about it, right?
Right, from your blog, actually. Are you ready? Finished? No.
Since then, a lot of things have changed. Now we have many practitioners in Brazil that are doing low carb and keto approaches. Janaína, for example, she's an endocrinologist, and she was one of the pioneers of endocrinologists with this approach in Brazil. As for me, we got together, some of us, and we started the Brazilian Low Carb Association. So now we have a way to spread the science, spread the news about low carb keto approaches. So I'll let Janaína talk a little bit.
Thank you. My name is Janaína. The pronunciation of the surname is Koenen. It's German. I'm an endocrinologist here in Brazil. I first heard of low carb from Dr. Souto's blog. Someone told me about him, and I said, okay, let's see what he has to tell. I read it. I read everything, and from him, I started reading all the books and listened to all the podcasts. And then I went to the literature and read all the articles I could put my hands on, actually. This was in 2016, so a lot later. And I went also into cancer and ketogenic diets, metabolic therapy. Actually, I saw you in LA, in the conference, Metabolic Health Summit. And in Brazil, it's a challenge because most of the endocrinologists are against it. They think it's bad for you, and they are all afraid of red meat, as usual. And everyone thinks it gives you cancer, and it's all about a discussion about plant-based diets, and that's what's going on right now here. So I'm really glad I'm here today.
Yeah, I'll just make a quick comment. I see that Alessandro has made it. So welcome, Alessandro. You need to take I think you're off mute now. So wonderful. Just, as you point out, most endocrinologists in general, are definitely less supportive of low carb diets, and they tend to push that. And that it seems like cardiologists, endocrinologists are probably the least, I guess, receptive. If we had to look at certain medical practitioners, as an orthopedic surgeon, to me, diet didn't even think about it, quite honestly. It wasn't really part of our training, because it was basically give me a hammer, give me a saw, give me a drill and some screwdrivers, and you're fixing people up. And then I think with urology, very similar. I mean, it's, you've got different tools, your cystoscopies and your renal stents and lithotripsy machines, and diet is obviously there's some dietary component with kidney stones, and that, whether it's oxalate or protein or cholesterol. But so those things are interesting. And you pointed about the red meat causing cancer. I just want to another study just came out. Yeah, it didn't come out yesterday, but it came out very frequently. Another huge review on colorectal cancer, and looking at all the nutritional supplements, vitamins, dietary components.
Yeah.
And whether something is believed to cause cancer or protect from cancer, when you look at the strength of the evidence, that is this really high quality evidence? It invariably turns out it's very, very low quality evidence. It's just this really poor epidemiology. And so we sort of, we're kind of rolling our dice on very, very low yield information. And we know that very often when epidemiologic studies are tested in the setting of RCTs, and they just fall apart. So we don't have good evidence one way or the other whether it causes cancer or not. And I kind of fall in the camp of, let's take care of the patient in front of us. Let's take care of the person who's clearly not doing well today and fix that issue. And then we can worry about if they're going to live to be 100 some other time. But that's not really, I don't think we're going to have much success if that's our main outcome.
And actually, obesity and insulin resistance are much more stronger risk factors for cancer.
Yeah, sure.
The trend is much better. So if you can address that first, maybe we can really help the patient.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%, wholeheartedly.
I love that paper by John Ioannidis, the one that he got some 50 ingredients from a recipe book. Mm-hmm. And basically everything either caused or prevented cancer. I mean, the same stuff caused or prevented cancer, depending on the paper you read. So it makes the point that nutritional epidemiology is a kind of pseudoscience, right?
It really is. And unfortunately, that's the vast majority of our nutrition knowledge and recommendations are based upon that. A few mechanistic animal studies, cell studies, and very, very, very few human interventional trials. And even then, those tend to be biomarkers, which may or may not be all that helpful. Let me ask Alessandro, can you unmute yourself?
Yeah, I'm here, Dr. ShawnBaker.
Okay, well, wonderful. And my understanding is, I'm not sure how much English you have. I know your English is going to be far, far better than my Portuguese. I can just guarantee that. I know about the Portuguese, but that's about it. But
yeah, I have a problem. My power down now, and before 1 minute and talk to you, my power then my house down now and reloading everything now. That's fine now. That's okay.
Well, let's hope. Well, I'm looking at you. I mean, I'm just. First of all, you're carrying a fair bit of muscle mass for an ultra runner. I'm just looking at your big bicep there on the screen. So, that's pretty cool. Let me just, if you're, and feel free to use, if you need some translation help, feel free to use it. But you recently completed a 100-mile race. I understand doing it with a carnivorous diet. What prompted you to take up even trying a carnivorous diet? What was the reason to do that in the first place?
Thank you, Dr. ShawnBaker. I'm trying the carnivore diet before the Ultraman World Championship in 2019, 2 weeks for putting my weight down, and I feel good. I feel great, And after this, our race in the year, the cancel, and call my nutrition like Leticia Moreira, and they say I want it back to carnivore diet for how can I feel the diet to change my body, my mind, and I start try and eat basically like a red meat and the organs like a liver and a hard chicken. And I feel better every day. I feel stronger every day. And I start my first challenger, and say, let's go run like 10 half marathons in 10 days. And how can I feel? And after 10 half marathon, I feel great. I feel stronger, and nothing happened. Like no energy down, nothing like that, And let's do the more challenges. I'm start thinking 100 miles for celebration my 50 years old, and let's do like 100 miles run. that start like my carnivore diet. That's a little resume.
Well, that's impressive. I mean, just the 10 half marathons in 10 days, you know, that's, you know, what is it, 130 something miles.
Yeah.
And you, like you said, you had no issues with energy. You didn't feel that you had to supplement with gels or sugars during the race, anything like that?
Perfect. Yeah. My muscles inflammation down, you know, I don't feel nothing after 10 half marathons. I feel great, you know. Basically like that, and sleeping well. I'm sleeping like a baby again. You know, like a magic, you know. I don't know what happened.
There was a recent study that just came out looking at ketogenic diets and exercise, and you know, this carnivore diet certainly has some overlap with that with regard to lack of carbohydrates. And one of the things that struck me as interesting, and I talked about this the other day, is, you know, not the fact that people lost weight and their blood glucose got better and, you know, everything got better health-wise, but from the athletic markers, you know, we saw better mitochondrial efficiency, we saw less oxidative damage, and we saw less markers of what some people would argue muscle damage, which would be things like myoglobin. You know, a lot of times when athletes, particularly, we see people going in, and Jose may have some appreciation for this, maybe more as from a nephrology standpoint, but we see people that develop rhabdomyolysis when their muscles break down, and we see these myoglobin proteins that will accumulate and will lead to kidney problems, and kidneys can often shut down because they can't clear the myoglobin. But we saw that in people on a ketogenic diet, much lower levels of myoglobin after intense exercise. And so I've seen personally, and I've been doing this for 4 years now, very shortly, my recovery is wonderful. I don't really get very sore. I'm able to train intensely day in and day out without issue. I mean, you're kind of telling me a little bit of that stuff. And so, so you did this. So you said you just turned 50 again. It's wonderful to see.
Yeah.
In the 50s, you know, doing those types of things.
7 months carnivore diet. Yeah. 7 months.
And so, talk to me about this 100-mile race you did. Where did you do that? Was it in Brazil or was it somewhere else?
No, Key West, Dr. John. Start in Key Largo, and I go to miles 0 on Key West. This is that's a race, the normal race in Florida. The name 100 Key West 100 miles. And the race canceled. Just I'm following the same course and the same rules, you know. And the Key Largo to Key West, 100 miles. Go straight. Stop for make like a exam, you know, like my blood pressure, my ketones levels, and my, you know, everything. Yeah, glucose in. Like that.
Yeah, well, I'll actually be in Miami, and I'll probably drive down to Key West next week. In fact, so I'll
nice. Yeah.
So
how can I suffering over there? Because 110 Fahrenheit, Dr. ShawnBaker.
Was it
very hot and humid, very humid and hot. Incredible.
80%, right? Humidity.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yes. Yeah, 110.
So 110 degrees, 100 miles. Obviously, it's a flat course, you know, because you're on the water.
Now, what I find interesting as a physician is many times I will tell my patients with pre-diabetes or metabolic syndrome to go in a low-carb ketogenic diet. And then the personal trainer will tell the patient that he or she need to eat a banana and oatmeal to exercise. Now, Alessandro at 50 years old can run a 100-mile ultra marathon in a carnivore diet. So why can't my patient that is just doing basic gym stuff do it on a low carb diet or even fasting. So I think what this incredible feat that Alessandro has done teaches all of us is that you actually don't need to eat any carbs to do elite exercise. So if you don't need it for elite exercise, obviously you don't need it to go to the gym.
And the most interesting stuff, he did it fasted, I mean, Alessandro, he started on a low-carb diet first. So he went through all the adaptations. Leticia, his nutritionist, she led him through it. Then afterwards, he went keto, and then he tried carnivore. So he didn't have all these issues with adaptation and the flu. This was all behind. And when he started on the carnivore diet, he was fasting too much because he wasn't hungry. He had some issues with performance. So when he came to me, we were talking, we did all of his exams, his lab work. And I talked to his nutritionist and said, okay, we have to make sure he gets all the calories and protein he needs, because he was spending like 8,000 calories a day. He was eating like 5,000 calories only. Then we adjusted. He got better by the day. And in his race, he had only bone broth and some supplements, electrolyte, no glucose at all, no gels ever. And he was fasted. He only ate through all of it, small quantity of meat once, because he didn't have his bone broth with him. Something happened, I don't know, I don't remember, but he ate like, I don't know, a chunk of meat through all the way. So he went fasted practically.
Amazing.
Yeah, I think that one of the interesting, and I'll point back to that paper, the other thing I forgot to mention was, they looked at, this was a 12-week exercise study looking at athletes on ketogenic diets, and the glycogen difference was only about 14%. So it wasn't very much. And then, Jeff Volek in his study with 6 months on elite endurance athletes showed minimal reduction in muscle glycogen. There's been another study that was done that showed a relatively significant decrease. But one of the points I'll make is the chronicity of adaptation. It seems like, because I see a lot of people that will go onto a diet, and they may come from a high carb diet, and maybe they'll a month or two in, they'll say, I just feel flat. And I do think it's a time frame. When we look at like some of these indigenous populations, like in Brazil, particularly southern Brazil, Argentina, they have the quote unquote the gaucho tradition there, where people would basically live and do hard work for months and months on presumably just meat-based diets. And we see that like some of the polar populations were known to have prodigious energy and endurance capacity. Through the winters, they would go 36, 48 hours without eating and still being able to perform at a very, very strenuous level in a very challenging environment, 45 degrees below 0 Fahrenheit, hunting, hauling, huge loads with them. And so we see that now. I'm just curious, because you said you'd monitored some things during the race. Blood glucose, I assume, didn't go to 0. I mean, obviously it's got to be coming from something. And so you would say that while your body is obviously through glycogenolysis, the liver is producing the glucose you need, and then there's this slow over time, because a 100-mile race is going to take you, and you'll have to tell me the time, but there's going to be some gluconeogenesis going on. A lot of it's going to come from lactate reshuttling. Most of gluconeogenic, most people don't realize is glucose recycling via lactate and the Cori cycles, where most of that glucose comes from anyway. And then, of course, any excess protein or fat that you're burning, some of that glycerol can be converted at a relatively, at a lower rate, but certainly it's there. And so we see this as a possibility. So what was your glucose like during the race? How did you feel? Did you hit a wall? I mean, a lot of people, in the marathon, when the glycogen stores run out at that, whatever it is, 20-mile mark or 2.5 hour, 3 hours, and these people hit the wall typically. Did you hit a wall, or was it pretty steady the whole way? Did you get faster at the end? Some people, one of the interesting things we see is, depending on how much fluid people drink, a lot of people will often negative split. And that is to say, they'll come in faster at the end than they at the beginning, because they've lost fluid and are just lighter. They've just got less, they're just carrying around less mass. So how did the race go for you over the course of the race?
The wall don't exist for me. And the carnivore diet, I can see the wall. And the most guy say like 30 kilometers and the marathon, they see the wall and they hit the wall, and not for me. I'm feel strong at the mile 0, the mile 100, and mile 0. I'm very, very strong. I'm feel tired, obviously. I'm feel tired, and mentally strong. The miles 100 and mile 0 never happened to me. But the curious, I never run marathon, Dr. ShawnBaker, never. Only inside the Ironman race, have the finish line and the marathon, but only marathon never run. And the 80 miles, 50 miles, but I see a lot of times the wall before the keto diet and low carb diet and the carnivore diet. But the 100 miles, I have no walls, no walls for me. And my energy is stable, you know, no breaking down, no up and down, but stable, very stable.
We have the graphs.
Yeah,
the glucose, the symmetry, the weight. I have them here. If you want, I can show it to you.
Yeah, if you can pull it up on a screen, I think you can.
You have to allow me.
Yeah, you can share something if you like. Just put it up on the screen.
Not only the glucose didn't go to 0, but it went up actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, it went up at some point. Yeah.
Yeah.
So let me find them here.
When I check my glucose around exercise, that's when it goes the highest for me, and particularly with high intense exercise. And we know that the liver can up its glucose output by about 1,500% with acute high intense exercise. And so we see that we have no problem making glucose if we need it.
So that's what strikes me when healthcare professionals will tell you, be aware that you need to eat some carbs so you don't have hypoglycemia. It simply does not happen. Those people have never seen a CGM in their lives. It doesn't happen.
I think, and there. I mean, obviously, and I know. As an endocrinologist, hypoglycemia is a concern for a lot of people. And there are people that very well can be very sick from that, and even fail.
Yeah, but it's because of medication. It's too much insulin or sulfonylureas and those drugs. It doesn't happen because you are fasted and if you're not taking medication.
But in particular, we see that if you have enough fat in the diet, it seems to protect us from hypoglycemia. It seems to, anyway.
And being fat adapted also.
Yeah, right. I think that truly helps. I wonder.
Can you see my screen? Can you see my screen?
Yeah. So what are we looking at here? So we get blood pressure, right?
So this is blood pressure. At some point he had it up. So, but he didn't check it again, and just afterwards it was normal. So we think it wasn't a correct measurement.
This is a delta on blood pressure, I guess. This is.
These are the measurements. Like systolic blood pressure, diastolic blood pressure.
Okay.
I think you need to multiply it by 10.
I see. Okay, I was just looking at the.
I don't know.
So it's 20. You multiply by 10, right?
Okay.
So
unless it's because he's in the middle of a race here, you would expect to see the blood pressure up a little bit higher than resting. So.
And here, the ketone bodies, they went up throughout the race.
So he would be considered in nutritional ketosis by that 2 hour. Is that 2 hour point or what is it?
Yes,
20% of the race.
A 2 hour point. I think he was too excited, too nervous in the beginning, and his cortisol was like, Yeah. And when it began, he got calmer, and then he went up. We measured his oximetry all the time. It was okay. Nothing different. His glucose, so it went up. It began low, then it went up. But I mean, in between 100 to 125, and stayed stable all the time.
And how long was this race? How many hours did he run for?
19 hours and 40 minutes.
So for 19 hours without any glucose in the body at all, you were able to maintain a blood glucose of around 100.
Yeah.
So, you know,
Yeah, the liver.
Obviously, our body can produce that without any exogenous glucose. I think that's pretty interesting.
So that's it. I think what we were most, I have another one. Sorry, the weight, his weight. The thing we were more worried about was him losing weight because it would mean dehydration. And, but it didn't happen. So he
had a weight check. He checked in and hopped on a scale every couple hours or something.
Because it was so hot. It's not a time in the year where people run there. It's not usual because it's really,
right.
So apart from everything, the diet and everything, we were really worried he would dehydrate. So we were giving him electrolytes and lots of liquid and fluids, and he went fine. So you see, he didn't lose weight.
You managed to put about 7 or 8 pounds on him. And so, and just, you know, you're running a marathon, I'm not a marathon, 100-mile ultra marathon, 110 degrees outside, you know, which is obviously most runners would be happy if it was 60 degrees, you know, 55, 60 degrees would be what they would like to see. So that's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
Did you, many people that do these races, you know, one of the complaints they have is that they're, you know, when they take these gels in, they get a lot of digestive problems. You know, they'll have stomach, you know, they just don't do well. And that's one of the biggest complaints. And since you're having no electrolytes, but you did take some meat in there. Did you have any
and bone broth also?
Yep.
Souto bone broth.
Yeah, Dr. Souto. Yes.
Did it upset your stomach in any way?
No, nothing. Because I'm training here in Florida. Use my longer run and weekends. I'm using soup bones. I feel great. And but in the 100 miles race, my challenger, one bottle the bones soup disappear. I think you want crocodile, alligator take for, and the finish line have very, very hungry and eat a little bit like beef dehydration beef. And then you get again.
How did you feel, and how did you recover? What did you eat when you got done? When were you able to eat? How did you feel for the next few days afterwards? Were you couldn't walk, or did you recover pretty well?
Oh yeah, Dr. ShawnBaker. Before changing my nutrition, I imagine I can walk in 100 miles after the race. But now, yeah, very clear for me, because in 2019 World Championship in Hawaii, Ultraman, after my race, just swam, just paddled with like the guys from Hawaii. And after 100 miles, I'm swimming the second day. And I'm walking like a little bit, something happened in my muscles, but discomfort, but nothing like a before the change in my diet. And the day two, I think, yeah, I'm swimming on day two. I'm swimming.
Yeah, there's another fellow, I think his name is, I want to say Michael McKnight, who I believe I interviewed a while back. He also ran 100 miles on a carnivore diet, around 18 hours. I don't think he did it in quite the heat as you did, but that's a very impressive time. I mean, you know, I've got my buddy Zach Bitter, who has a world record on this, and he's done it in a low carb setting, not completely carnivore, but he's often said that since when he switched to a meat heavy low carb diet, that his recovery is tremendously. It used to be his legs would swell up. He couldn't walk for 2 or 3 days. He couldn't squat for several days. And he said when he switched it up, it was like the next day he could do squats, he could walk around. It was significantly different. And so we're seeing that recovery, you know, makes a difference. Do you feel like you could have kept going? You know, if somebody said run another 10 miles, could you have gone 110 miles? Or if somebody told you, or were you just like, that was it?
Oh, let's go. Let's go. And now I'm preparation for Ultraman Brazil, and the carnivore diets again. But the Ultramans are different now. The 6.2 miles swim and 262 miles ride bike, and the 2 marathons and finish line. It's a little bit different, you know. Let me see how my body, you know, like feel different or no. The comparison, the 100 miles for Ultraman race, you know. But I think nothing happened, nothing changed. I think.
Yeah, there's a fellow by the name Pete Jacobs who won the Kona Hawaii Ironman, and he is now on a carnivore diet, or he has last time I talked to him. And you know, he was battling a lot of digestive issues, so he switched over to carnivore, and he feels that his performance is coming along very nicely, and that he thinks that he could compete at that high level again on that diet. And so, are you currently living in Brazil right now, or are you in the U.S.?
No, I'm here in Florida, Deerfield, Florida. I'm living here in Deerfield, Florida.
What part of Florida are you in?
Deerfield Beach, South Florida.
Okay, yeah, because like I said, I'll be in Miami next week.
Yeah, like a 45, 1 hour from Miami.
In the Keys?
No, up north.
Oh, okay, up north. Are you on the Atlantic side then?
Yeah, like that.
Okay, well that's gonna be neat.
So, Dr. ShawnBaker, why do you think the recovery is so much better? So, is it the lower inflammation because you don't have grains, sugar? Why do you think it's because a lot of athletes say that their recovery is faster, less pain, less lesions?
Yeah, well, I think some of the things we do know, and I see this all the time, and I think this is an important question because recovery leads to more opportunities to train. You know, there's a balance between recovery and training, and if you're always having to recover, you train less, and if you train less, your performance ultimately may not be as good. And so this is I think when we look at what goes into a performance on any one given day, it's the 6 months, it's the 1 year going up to it. And if you're able to train more frequently with more intensity, I think you ultimately get a better outcome. We do know that there seems to be less reactive oxygen species. You know, there's less just oxidative stress that occurs. I mean, exercise certainly, you know, is causing, you know, breathing, eating anything causes oxidative stress. I mean, our body's constantly dealing with oxidation, and we have an endogenous antioxidant system through things like glutathione, superoxide dismutase, and many, many others. But we seem to see that reduction in carbohydrates brings that total oxidative stress amount of reactive oxygen species that are generated down significantly. I think that's one part of it. And then the other thing, particularly with what he's doing as an endurance athlete, we know that we are seeing, even more so than weight training, we see that endurance athletes are breaking down tissue, particularly muscle tissue. And you know, that's what we do at night when we sleep. We start to rebuild some of that stuff, and our nutrition plays a big role in that. And so when we are feeding ourselves highly bioavailable foods like meat, and particularly red meat, we're giving ourselves just more efficient building blocks. They're better bioabsorbed, they're bioavailable, they're better absorbed, they don't have things that compete with the absorption. It's just in the, you know, as you know, it's in the correct ratios for amino acids that we need. I mean, we're very much similar to any other mammal that we might eat, you know, particularly a red meat mammal. And so we've got, you know, lack of or decrease in overall damage, oxidative stress, and then just better building blocks. And I think that leads to increased recovery, decreased inflammation, decreased soreness, and just better availability for training. I think that makes some difference. And you see that. And I think what we really see it in is, you know, like I said, Alessandro is, you know, 50, I'm in my 50s. I think particularly athletes as they get a little bit older, they notice this far more quickly, because particularly lifelong athletes, you accumulate all these inflammatory areas in your body, whether it's due to injury or overuse or whatever, but when that stuff starts to go away, and it does often, it just makes you train better. So I think there's a number of other things that go into that, but I think those are the basic things that we know. And there's, like I said, there's literature data that supports that. When I think Jeff Volek, maybe others, they took basically ultra marathon runners and took muscle biopsies of them right after coming off the race, and they could look at markers of oxidative stress, and we see better mitogenesis, mitochondrial health, mitochondrial efficiency. All of those things, I think, result in an advantage when it comes to performance. And so I think we'll see more and more athletes. I mean, we've got we've gotten high-level professional rugby players. We've got people in the United States in the NFL that are doing this. We've got mixed martial artists. I've seen lots of distance runners, whether it's marathon, triathlon, or even ultra marathon, that are doing this and doing well. And I think the key point is, as Alessandro said, it wasn't just an abrupt shift. It was a transition over time from low carb, keto, carnivore. And so the body has, 6 months, a year, maybe more, to fully adapt. It's been my experience is that, the harder you push, the longer it might take to fully adapt. But once you do adapt, like you show very nicely in that graph, I mean, he had no problem with glucose production. If you've got plenty of glucose, that means you got what you need to fuel the cells. I mean, whether there's intramuscular glucose via glycogen or not, where the normal person is running out of glycogen at 2 hours or 2.5 hours or 15 kilometers, he's just sailing right by that, and he's still utilizing glucose. I don't know if you were to put if you made him run with a mask on and you were getting an RQ output on him, you'd probably see that at some point during that run he's definitely using glucose. So it's not like you don't use glucose, but you are able to maximize that fat utilization to the point, but you still have that glucose when you need. So you still are, quote unquote, metabolically flexible, because it's not like your body's not seeing glucose. I mean, we always can use glucose, and it's interesting on ketones. One thing, the interesting studies I've seen, that ketones really get reserved for brain, heart, and kidney utilization more so than muscle utilization. Now we see an upregulation of free fatty acid usage and intramuscular triglycerides that accumulate on these higher fat diets. And so if you were to biopsy his muscles, maybe probably before the race, you'd see probably quite a bit of intramyocellular triglycerides, which is not a bad thing in the case of an athlete. When we start seeing these insulin resistant people, you see the ceramides, which are a different type of fat, and that's a product of probably mitochondrial overload and incomplete products of beta oxidation. And that's a different story than an athlete that's just filling his muscles up with fuel. So instead of filling it up with as much glycogen, you're seeing, again, this recent study I pointed out, I mean, something like an 80-something% increase in intramuscular triglyceride and only a 14% decrease in glucose, or glycogen rather. And so you've got both fuels on board now. So now you've got glucose if you need it for the sprinting, and you've got fat for the sort of the maintenance stuff, the VO2 max, 60% stuff, 70% stuff. And then when you stop hitting that 80, whatever the threshold is for you, and it's going to be higher than it is for a carb-based athlete, because you can run on fat for longer. And this is what I found. I didn't get sore very easy. I didn't have that lactic acid, hydrogen ion soreness, even at high intensities, to the degree that I had before. And I think that also allows you to push a little harder. I don't know if perhaps, Alessandro, you can talk about your training, because your training days, you don't run 100 miles on a training day. You probably do, something maybe 10, 20 miles, and then you might have some fast days in there. I don't know what your training's like, but can you comment on how your training is with carnivore and some of your different training schemes?
Yeah, before changing my diet, I feel very tired every day, Dr. ShawnBaker, and I feel I have a little bit belly, And training hard, and my belly a little bit like a pocket, I don't know. And I have a high blood pressure, and use like a medication. Now I'm using like a half. Now I feel good, but the most important is like change my diet for like a inflammation my body. You know, I'm feel like a pain, like a muscle pain every day. Now don't exist. It disappear. You know, disappear, Dr. ShawnBaker. Disappear. I don't know. Just I have one question about like lactate. What do you think about you consume you like the most down the lactic?
I'm not sure I quite understand. You're asking about and again, I would have to confirm this, but I think we might generate a little less lactose or lactic acid during exercise relative to someone on a higher carb-based diet. And lactic acid is going to be a product of glycolytic activity. And so what happens is you're able to do a higher and higher intensity before you tap into glycolysis. And so if you can, let's just say, 100% max effort would generate lactic acid, and you might start seeing that at 70% of a max effort on a high carb diet. Well, maybe on a fat-based diet, you don't reach that threshold till 80%. So you've got that extra 10% of ramping up intensity before you start producing that lactic acid, that metabolic waste product. And, it's more complicated than this, but some people believe that, there's these buildup of local metabolites is what causes the muscles to, become uncomfortable. Tim Noakes will tell you it's all central governor theory. And it may be that the brain is sensing this stuff, and the brain's the actually thing that's shutting it down. But regardless, we all know that when we push hard enough, we're gonna, there's a period where our body says, okay, that's all we can do. We're gonna stop. For most people, there's some people like, he'll point out these world record holders that will go faster in the last, 100 meters of a 800 meter race or something like that. Just because they just, and it may be that their brain was slowing them down, just unconsciously, and then when I see when I do intervals, I might do 10 interval sprints, and I'll go, by the time I get to number 6 or 7 or so, I get tired, 8, 9, I start to slow down. But by that 10th one, I'm like, this is the last one. My body somehow finds it to go harder. It's like I've psychologically realized this is the last one, so I'm going to be done. And so when you see that finish line, you always can kind of smile and say, I can find that extra 5%. But I do think that we probably generate a little bit less, less of these glycolytic products because we're just not using glycolysis as much as somebody else might be doing. And
I think we do here. I have lots of athletes, runners, and something I think helps a lot is running by the frequency and Phil Maffeton's method and this aerobic training through adaptation, through keto adaptation. So you teach your body to spend fat and before. And when you have to sprint, you have the glycogen necessary and you have the metabolic flexibility to use it. So I think it helps a lot too. If you take time, if you take your time, if you don't get in a hurry. So all these studies with less than 6 weeks are ridiculous. I mean, they shouldn't even exist because
I think
you take 6 weeks at least to adapt to the diet.
That would be like, like folks like Louise Burke, who's, lauded as a very, very, very intelligent sports researcher. But she's, the studies she has done have typically been very short interventional studies, 3 weeks, typically 3-4 weeks. And they're looking at, maximal wattage production on cyclists. A lot of times she did a race walk study. And you know, and I know there are people to say, well, you're just an excuse, but I do think there is an adaptation period. And, you know, whether you use Maftone or some other, you know, 80-20 long, slow combination for running, I'm not an endurance athlete. I've never been. I've never had the desire to do that. You won't catch me running 100 miles anytime soon unless the lion's chasing me for 100 miles. I doubt I'll run that. But and neither will the lion, quite honestly. They get tired out after about 20 seconds. But yeah, I mean, there is this adaptation period, and you know, it's one of those things that a lot of people just don't have the patience to do it. A lot of people don't have the patience to do the Maftone in general because they're like, "What? I got to run at a heart rate of 120? I mean, I'm not even doing anything." You know, and so it's just a different mindset to shift over. But I do think the ones that are willing to realize this is a year-long process, you know, are going to be better. Now, somebody who's in the middle of their season and they're getting paid a lot of money to be an athlete, and you know, you tell them, hey, we're going to switch over and you've got to perform in 6 weeks, it may not be the best strategy for them. You know, I certainly think increasing the red meat in the diet in particular, regardless if you still utilize carbohydrates, is still going to give you a performance benefit. So, I mean, you know, you know, I mean, this is a problem we have. You guys live in a place, Brazil, who has you've got the biggest cattle herd in the world in Brazil. If you didn't know that, you've got 250 million cattle or something like that. So now we make the most beef in the United States just because you know, we've got more efficiency at doing that. And some people will criticize us for that, the way we raise it. But obviously that you are a country of people that have always had that in the diet. Although it's, you know, there's obviously a lot of other stuff there. It's probably not so helpful. The sugars and all the refined stuff, and you know, I'm sure the seed oil has made its way into the diet there. Mm-hmm. Are you guys? What is the general climate like as physicians in Brazil? Is it still pretty much? Because you know, I will tell you the one thing I really respect Brazil for is for their dietary guidelines policy was basically eat with family, eat home cooked meals, don't eat a bunch of processed food. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that has been the general message from the government. Maybe I'm mistaken, but I thought that's about what it was. Is that correct?
The guidelines were recently under attack. Our new government, now 2 years old government, they are pretty much playing by the industry playbook. So very recently they attacked the guidelines, saying that the guidelines need some urgent review because, as they say, we need to stop this nonsense of saying that processed foods are not good for you, you know? So I agree, the guidelines are really very good. I think they are one of the best in the world. But as we speak, they are under attack by the lobby of the big industry.
Yeah, you know, the problem is processed foods is a very nebulous term. You know, what is a process? Is ground beef a processed food? You know, is cheese a processed food? You know, is milk a processed food? You know, there's lots of ways to define processing. So I think that's one of the problems we have here. But we all know that, you know, Coca-Cola, we all know that these things that live on the shelf for 10 years,
forever,
they come in a box. That stuff has really no part in our diet, I don't think, or shouldn't, or should be minimal in the diet. And you know, it goes to show you that the and Stephen's kind of clarifying ultra processed. I mean, again, it's semantics. You can talk about hyper processed, ultra processed, you know, whatever. It goes to show you where the motives are. I mean, they really are affected by lobbying in the industry. Mm-hmm.
It was very clear this time. I mean, you had the spokesperson for the processed food lobby industry talking to the journalists. It was on the newspapers. It was not covered up. It was open lobbying. So, and of course, I mean, you're right, cheese is a processed food. So the thing that the guidelines are against is ultra-processed food. Mm-hmm. And although you can always find an exception, like whey protein is a ultra-processed food, and I don't think it's bad for you. And like sugarcane juice, it's unprocessed and it's bad for you. So you can find cracks in the system. But as a heuristic, as a simple rule of thumb, it works pretty well.
Well, you know, and I think just let's just cook our own darn food, and no one wants to do that anymore. I mean, it's just everybody wants to open a package and throw it in the mouth and throw the package in the kitchen. I don't have to wash a dish. You know, I think there are people that would happily not own a refrigerator, that would just open a shelf up, open a package, pop it in their mouth, and that's as simple as it could be. So it's tough. You know, hopefully enough people come to their senses. It seems like you're swimming upstream sometimes, but the fight is definitely needs to happen. So I'm going to give Alessandro, because we've been going an hour, believe it or not. Alessandro, is there anything else you want to share with us? What do you have coming up, as far as you said you're going to go back and do some triathlons now, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
Yes, Dr. Shawn. I'm come back training for Ultraman triathlon and continue my carnivore diet, because I feel well, I feel great, and no complaints. And my family try to, my kids, my wife, she loved too. And we come back to triathlon, ultra distance now. And another question. You think have a more adaptation for burning more fat and during the training and a race? What do you think? Because if you the opportunity to send it to you, the like energy use, you see like a 76% fat for energy in my race, in my challenge. What do you think? You think I have an opportunity for go up for 80% and 90% in the carnivore diet? What do you think?
Well, I think when Volek and Finney did their study, I think their faster study, they saw some of the highest rates of fat oxidation ever recorded by humans. I don't know what your numbers translate to on how many grams per minute or you're burning, but you probably could go up more. I mean, I don't know. I'm not going to say there's no room for improvement. My interest would really be, because I'm just wondering how you do with the sprinting at this point. If you go out there and run sprints, if you do, maybe you're doing quarter repeats or something like that. There's some of that training probably is part of your overall preparation for these types of things, and see how you do with that, and if you can sort of thrive on both ends of the spectrum. Because there's many people that will concede, yes, a fat-based diet, you can do very good on ultra marathons and running, and that's clear. But can you, like the naysayers will say, well, can you run a 2-hour marathon or a 2:10 marathon? Can you do the Tour de France with all the hills?
Okay.
I don't know. That's a thing that we like to see somebody prove those types of things. Now, again, people are asking me, why don't you go out and run a marathon? Well, I'm too big to run marathons. It's like asking someone that's a racehorse jockey to go dunk a basketball. I mean, there's some things people are not really designed to do, and there's no point. So if you excel, like if you do something at a world-class level, I mean, and I would argue anybody that can run 100 miles in 19 hours is very much world-class. Particularly at 110 degrees without anybody racing with him, because you didn't have anybody running with you, did you? It was just by yourself.
Yeah.
So I imagine if you threw a couple other racers in there, you can draft on some people. If the weather was more favorable, if you had 2 or 3 more under your belt, you'd probably bring this down, you know, a couple hours. You'd probably take 17 hours, 16 hours, who knows. So there's, you know, there's no reason not to keep going, particularly if you feel good, right? So I'd love to see what you continue to do, and if you thrive in the, you know, in the Ironman stuff, that would be really cool to see as well. So yeah, I think you could probably continue to improve. I don't see what would make you think you can't, because you're relatively new to this. I mean, a lot of people, you know, well, I'm not talking about new to athletics, but new to running in this type of style. I know my friend Zach, I mean, he's gotten better every year, you know, and he's been running for 20 plus years, and now he's seen world-class performance. He's broken 100-mile world records 3 years in a row on different, you know, whether it's trail, track, or treadmill. So he's continues to get better. Anyway, all right.
Invited me and my best friend in Brazil, Dr. Janayan and Dr. Souto. Thank you so much. All right.
And thank you for documenting this, guys. This will give you know, more and more people the perhaps inspire some other people to take it up and try it. And, you know, again, as an athlete at heart, I love to see this stuff. But just as importantly, you've seen your blood pressure come down, your inflammation come down, your belly, you know, the belly fat come down. All those things are important for health. And it's, you know, you see this all the time. We have these people that run and run and run and run, and they still have a little belly. And it's like, why can't you get rid of a belly when you're running, you know, you're running 50, 60, 70 miles a week and you still got that belly hanging around? Doesn't make sense.
Don't make sense.
Yeah. So anyway, great, guys. All right. Well, I appreciate everyone. Thank you for taking the time. Have a great evening there in Brazil. I look forward to getting down there. Hopefully, I'll keep my fingers crossed I get to make it this year, because I'm just been very excited about it. I was there when I was a baby. I flew on the way down to Africa. We stopped in Brazil for like a few hours. I've never, so I can't say I've actually officially been. So I'm looking forward to checking it out. So, all right.
Thank you very much, and we'll be waiting for you next year.
Yeah, hopefully I'll see you in March.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody. We'll see you guys back. Have a good rest of your weekend. I'll see everybody on Monday. Thank you. Take care. Bye now.
Bye-bye.
Right.